All right, people are coming in. There's Sydney and others. Let me shortly start with an introduction because this is an exciting, as always, episode of Climate Cafe online, of course. And this time we're going to talk about a program for Rijkswaterstaat. 8 PhDs are doing research on how this organization, who's responsible in the Netherlands, of course, for flood mitigation, so the sea dikes, so to say, but also the transport on roads and also the waterways, of course, and how we can improve that, knowing that the climate is changing. And today we have two speakers of the PhD. It's Cheyenne that will start, and afterwards Rui. And then, but maybe some of you are not familiar with Climate Cafe, so maybe Sydney or others, Charnay, can maybe lend some lines on what are we here for.
Yeah, I think Sydney has better expert knowledge.
All right.
Well, sure. No, it's fine. Yeah, what we what we do for over 5 years now is talk about green blue topics. Green blue infrastructure is our main topic. That started out with biofuels, but we're discussing a lot of different topics from city water, urban stormwater management to dikes. We had it before this topic with flowering dikes, solar panels, floating cities. Erosion processes and all kind of topics that are on the topic of climate adaptation, sustainability, and mainly green blue, hence the name Green Blue Climate Cafe. And we always have a lot of interesting speakers, young and old. So today again, yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, and then I think, maybe this is also a preparation for tomorrow. It's a big day in Groningen with Rijkswaterstaat. And Cheyenne and Rui are the star speakers, but we're going to kick off today with Cheyenne. Yeah, the floor is yours. And then I think we do both presentations after row, and then afterwards we have Q&A. Take it away, Cheyenne.
All right, everyone. Good to be speaking here today also as a preparation for the big event tomorrow. I'm one of the PhDs working on this knowledge program of Rijkswaterstaat. And I'm doing this at the Rijksuniversiteit Groningen, University of Groningen, and specifically at the Faculty of Spatial Sciences and the Department of Planning. So basically in 2023, Rijkswaterstaat celebrated its 225 years already as our national infrastructure provider. And because it was such a big event, they wanted to develop a knowledge program specifically aimed at climate adaptation, as of course, a lot of things are changing out here. So from this knowledge program, I am mainly focused on the institutional side and the policy side of this. And I'm not doing that on my own. I'm supported by a great research team at the University of Groningen, with Margot van der Brink, specialized in water management, Jos Arts and Tim Buscher, both specialized in infrastructure planning. And yes, next to these amazing people supporting my research, I also have a sounding board from Rijkswaterstaat. These are people that are giving me unsolicited advice on basically everything that has to do with my research. They help me get through the organization, as it's such a large organization, which it may be difficult to find your way. So they give me a lot of advice, a lot of input, a lot of expertise, reflections, everything. So we have people from GPO, which is the large project part of Rijkswaterstaat. We have people from the knowledge part, VVL, but also the company historian and also someone from the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management that also provides input on my research. So what I would like to do with you today is dive into the second part of my research. So my research is divided in 4 parts, basically all a different topic. And the topic of this second part is policy instruments for climate adaptations. So what we noticed is that within the organization, you basically have the dry networks and the wet networks, so the water and the road network. And there were some differences between these networks in terms of how they approach their projects. And because of this difference in their approach, we also figured maybe there is a difference in how they approach climate adaptation and climate change as well. So at first, we wanted to do a comparative study of two programs within the organization that are fairly big at the moment. So right now, Rijkswaterstaat's one big assignment is the renewal of a lot of infrastructure assets. And within these renewal programs, we figured, well, how does climate adaptation, how is it involved in these projects and how do they work on it? So therefore, we looked at policy instruments, and here I define instruments as basically the mechanisms with which organizations employ so they can reach their goals. So for this research, we looked at the Rijkswaterstaat, the renewal programs, but after a while we figured maybe we should look broader at Rijkswaterstaat and not just at the renewal programs I specified earlier. So in terms of research methods, we first did some literature study, dove through the academic literature, also did some document analysis of documents from Rijkswaterstaat to determine what are their goals, what are their aims, what's their vision around climate adaptation, also which instruments do they provide. And we have complemented this with 2 rounds of interviews, where the first round of interview is aimed at identifying all the policy instruments, and the second round of interview more in how the instruments are used in practice. And I'm currently still in the second round of interviews, so it's an ongoing project. And to structure this analysis, I have used the NATO typology. NATO stands for Nodality, Authority, Treasure, and Organization, not to be confused with the other NATO we know. Basically, this typology is used in literature to describe the governing resource, to distinguish between the governing resources that organizations can use to reach their goals. So we have nodality instruments. These are aimed at the creation of knowledge. So they're also called informative instruments. Here you can think about visualization, education, scenarios, anything that is involved with gaining knowledge. Second, we have authority or regulative instruments. Here you can think about regulations, rules, standards. It's mainly based on more authoritative instruments, and it's more like the laws and more mandatory things that have to happen in an organization, so that you kind of use force to make sure people do something with climate adaptation. Third, we have treasure or the financial instruments. Here you can think of financial stimulants, but also sort of punishments to change behavior. So stimulants could be subsidies, grants, and things to destimulate, for instance, taxes. Lastly, we also have organizational instruments. Here you can think of things like boundary spanning or the hiring of external knowledge, those kind of things. And what you basically want to do to get a maximum result is create a coherent and complementary mix of instruments so that they complement each other and they strengthen each other in reaching climate adaptation. So then we move to the instruments for climate adaptation, and this is some of my preliminary results that I have gathered so far. So in total, we see that there are relatively many nodality instruments, so 6 nodality instruments, a little bit less on the treasure and authority side, and also some organizational instruments. And I would like to go through them a little bit so you can see what Rijkswaterstaat is currently doing with these instruments. So when we start with the nodality instruments, you can see a few examples of them on the right side of the screen. We, for instance, have a climate adaptation tool. This is a digital tool that kind of helps guide people working on projects on how to deal with climate adaptation. So the tool kind of asks you questions like, okay, in which type of project are you working? Is it like a renewal project? Is it a completely new project? Is it more based on maintenance? And then they kind of guide you through which measures you could take during which steps of your project. The second instrument is the climate effect graphic. This is more of a visualization that helps people to get talking about climate adaptation, and it demonstrates the climate effects on the networks of Rijkswaterstaat. So think about what happens on the road network when we have drought, what happens when there's heat, what happens with higher water levels, lower water levels. Those kind of things can be found there. So that's more of an informational type of instrument. The third instrument is one of the most important ones, I would say, of Rijkswaterstaat. It's the climate stress test. Basically, what happens here is that we research where the vulnerabilities are in the networks. And when we have done so, we go and discuss these results with the regional parts of Rijkswaterstaat to see, okay, how can we deal with these vulnerabilities? What do they mean for the future? And then Rijkswaterstaat gives reports these results to the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, which they will use in decision making about policy from the ministry. The fourth instrument is kind of an interesting instrument. It's an instrument that refers you to other instruments. So it's basically a guideline, and it does not only contain information about climate adaptation, also about sustainability, also about safety. But this guideline has also a chapter on climate adaptation. And basically what it does here is it specifies where you can find all the information that you might need in a project about climate adaptation. So where can you find all these tools? What tool do you use in which case? What are the guiding principles that we are supposed to follow? Those kind of things can be found in there. And this quality guide is basically developed in one of the renewal programs that we looked at, but it's now also recreated for other parts of the organization, so they can also find, and also more concretely find, where they have to look for certain measures. Yes. And then occasionally there's also some learning labs and expert labs being organized where professionals share their work on climate adaptation and how they have incorporated it in projects, basically to provide some to share their knowledge, to share their experience, but also reflections with others, so that others can learn from it and also can apply it in their own practice, in their own projects. And lastly, there's an internal knowledge sharing page as well. This is similar to the quality guideline. It's a place where all the information comes together, but it's also a place where people can ask questions. So it also has a discussion forum where people can post anything they are working on, just informative, ask questions, all these other things, but for people to engage and for people from different parts of the organization working on climate adaptation, it kind of provides a platform to share this knowledge and also to learn and ask the right questions. So when we go to authority instruments, I have identified two, and they're quite interesting, I would say. So it's both two guidelines, basically, one on energy and climate in one of the processes of Rijkswaterstaat, which provides guidelines. Yeah, it kind of guides you through the process. It's not necessarily only based on adaptation. I would say there's also a lot of mitigation in there. And we also have the guideline climate scenarios. And this is a very interesting one, I think. It's also one of the most important ones at the moment. This guideline was introduced officially, I think, 2 years ago. And it basically specifies how climate adaptation, or how climate scenarios, and with these climate scenarios, you can think of the KNMI scenarios published in 2023, how they are supposed to be used in practice. So in projects, but also in more strategic positions in the organization, also the ministry. And it's not only for Rijkswaterstaat, it also provides some inspiration for other networks, such as the rail network from ProRail, within the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. And although this guideline is actually mandatory to be used everywhere throughout the organization, I also found with a lot of the project managers that I spoke that not everyone uses it, or people have heard about it but aren't really sure what to do with it. It's also, of course, a relatively new instrument, so that would also be an explanation for that. And it kind of still has to find its way into the lower guidelines and other parts of the organization. So basically, this guideline is one that's at the very top and it has to find its way down to the projects. So that is in other guidelines, that is in design principles, those kind of things. Then there is also one financial instrument, also a very interesting one, I must say. It's the 15 million euro regulation. And basically what it entails is that it provides some flexibility within projects to use up to 15 million euros for climate adaptation within projects. However, this budget of 15 million euros comes from the existing project budget. So it's not additional money that projects are getting to work on climate adaptation. So basically what that entails is that if a project chooses to engage with climate adaptation and use this 15 million of the budget has to come from something else within the project. So maybe it would go at the cost of safety or at the cost of something else. So that is very interesting, as I also don't believe it stimulates projects to change their behavior and become and actually use it for climate adaptation. Now it kind of feels like something extra that you could do instead of something you always have to be doing. So that's also very interesting. Lastly, we come to the organizational instruments. So with Rijkswaterstaat 225 years of existence, when they celebrated that, they also introduced the focal point climate adaptation, which is also a relatively new organizational unit. This organizational unit is the main organizational unit working on climate adaptation. So what they do is develop some of these instruments we've mentioned before, such as the 50 million regulation. But they also, basically their goal is to get climate adaptation throughout the organization, which is very difficult. But it's also, so they're kind of figuring it out. They have specified the climate adaptation pathways also for the organization, and they're trying to execute those now. Another team working on climate is the Climate Resilient Networks. This is the organizational unit that is responsible for executing the climate stress test that we have talked about. So they also do the risk dialogues and talk to the region and also report back to the ministry. Third, we have the Support Center on Climate Adaptation, which is a knowledge unit where you can ask a question to them and they will put it out on the market and involve a consultant to basically provide advice on how to approach climate adaptation in a specific project. And lastly, the core team climate adaptation, which is where the strategic discussion takes place between the ministry and Rijkswaterstaat on how to approach climate adaptation. They also somewhat work on the instruments that we have discussed before, such as the 50 million regulation, but yeah, from a different kind of perspective. And these are all of them together. Let's go back for 1 second. Because what I also think is very interesting when we look at these instruments is you can already kind of see it. You see climate adaptation, you see climate resilience. Water robust is also a term that comes forward a lot. So that's kind of interesting to see that there's some confusion within the organization about the terminology. So sometimes we talk about resilience, sometimes about adaptation, sometimes even also about mitigation. It's not quite clear which way we are headed. So that also made me think, because these instruments, we of course use them to reach a certain goal in terms of climate adaptation. But what exactly is this goal, and what exactly is the vision around climate adaptation that we are working towards? So there's some unclarity about this in the organization, which I also think isn't too weird of a thing. I mean, it's an organization of around 10,000 people. In terms of terminology, it's not always going to be exactly the same words. It basically depends on who you talk to. But yeah, it does bring some confusion, and also within projects, project managers have asked me, okay, but when exactly can we call a project climate adaptive? When can we put a stamp on it and say, okay, now it's climate adaptive for the coming so and so for years? There's a lot of unclarity about the topic. So that's also one of the interesting findings that I found. So these are all of the instruments together, but also, yeah, so what we see from these instruments is that there are quite a lot of nodality instruments, and nodality instruments, so they are based on, or they are aimed at knowledge, which is kind of odd because well, these nodality instruments are based on the assumption you basically need them when there is a lack of knowledge, but you already have the right capacity and commitment. And that is something that's also up for a discussion, because Rijkswaterstaat is an organization that is currently very busy with very large renewal projects, or for which they are under pressure because all the processes have to be fastened up. Everything has to be quicker, more efficient, more standardized. So it is kind of interesting to see the word capacity here, because is there actually capacity to do something with the knowledge that you have gathered with these nodality instruments? On the other side, it's also very logical that there are a lot of nodality instruments, and that's because nodality instruments are relatively come with relatively low cost compared to the other types of instruments. And as I said, capacity is low, also not only in terms of human resources, but also in terms of financial resources. So in that sense, it kind of makes sense. When we look at authority instruments, there also was a very interesting discussion that occurred with my sounding board, because in theory, an authority instrument should be prescriptive in terms of its character. It should be mandatory to use. Well, I also noticed in practice that it's not always used. So how does that work? Because there's seems to be missing some kind of evaluation loop of whether they are used. So that is also very interesting to see, especially concerning the guideline on the climate scenarios, which is seen as one of the important climate adaptation measures that there is within the organization. It's interesting to see that it's not used in practice, and that, yeah, while it still has a prescriptive character. So it also, in the discussion we talked about, maybe Rijkswaterstaat should be more strict in this these type of instruments and the use of them. Furthermore, the treasure instrument, it offers flexibility. So that's the 15 million regulation. It offers flexibility within project budgets, but it is still no additional budget, and therefore also not necessarily a financial stimulant for projects. So when I asked the project managers that I spoke, have you ever used this regulation? Do you intend to use it? Most said, well, it is interesting, but it doesn't stimulate them enough to do something with climate adaptation. They see it as something that is extra. It's basically like a nice to have, but not a need to have. So in order to change that, I think something from the authoritative instruments also has to change, so that the authority and treasure instruments can complement and strengthen each other. So yes, and also a lot of the instruments that I just talked about are known by name by the people that I spoke to, but they are rarely used within project practice. So currently, Rijkswaterstaat is also doing an evaluation of certain instruments to see what is happening. They also are provided with a lot of feedback to adjust the instruments, and hopefully in the future, improve their usage and make them better suitable for projects. But this is exactly what I would like to discuss tomorrow as well. With the people from Rijkswaterstaat there, I am very curious about their reflections on why these instruments are rarely used in practice, and how we can improve that. So yes, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great overview. And a lot of tools that I didn't know as well. And I'm actually in this program, and I can imagine what you, with the interviews that they don't know it, they don't use it, and how to. That's a great topic for tomorrow as
Yes.
well.
Yeah, so a lot of the project managers that I spoke to also said, yeah, well, there's a lot of topics that are very important. So we also talk a lot about sustainability, safety, other things that biodiversity around roads, and all these different topics. From all of them, there's like a guideline.
Yeah.
But how do we make sure that everyone keeps the right overview of all these guidelines and knows how to use them? So it's also a
Yeah.
bit of a search sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And this is targeted to Rijkswaterstaat, so they have to enter that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Shall we allow maybe 1 or 2 questions before we go to Rui? Are there any urgent, or we can do the Q&A after? No. Shall we? Yeah.
I have a question.
Fatima. Yeah.
Yeah, for future research, which instrument do you think is most important for a researcher to spend more time on, based on your opinion?
I think it would be in the combination of the authority and the treasure instruments. I think there are quite a lot of nodality instruments already, but I also think that if you really want to make a change, maybe we have to be more coercive in that sense towards the organization, which I think you can do greatly with authority instruments. But also, yeah, what would a project manager, in which circumstance would a project manager change their approach to a project? I think it's also if there's some financial incentive to do so. So I think you can combine those two very well. So the authority and the financial instruments in combination, that I can think can actually make a change instead of focusing so much on creating knowledge. Because if you have a lot of knowledge but you don't know how to use it in practice, I'm not sure whether a lot will be changing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your response.
Yeah. Reminds me of most institution needs a roadmap, right? Where are we now and where to go to? And it's always finance and governance, and could be replicated as well. Yeah. Shall we, due to time, go to Rui? Are you ready? Or should we? Yeah. All right.
That's
Otherwise,
fine. No
yeah.
problem.
And then we have a Q&A after with Cheyenne as well.
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Yes. All right, so I will present about the hands part in this project about water quality monitoring and climate adaptation near the Dutch main roadway network. And before I start, for those who don't know me, I'm Rui Lima, researcher at the Hanse, also doing a PhD at Utrecht University and working at Indimel with aquatic drones. So you can see in this picture, the roadway network, the highway network of the Netherlands, and it's overlapped on the surface water bodies of the Netherlands. So you can see there are a lot of overlapping points. And of course, you have a lot of cars producing a lot of pollutants that eventually, when it rains, all those pollutants may end up in the water systems. So this research will try to look into that, try to assess whether it is creating a problem or not. And with climate change, with more intense storms or more localized in time, you can have a lot of these pollutants going into the water at the same time. And also with the higher temperatures, of course, they can also create more water quality problems associated with once they reach the water systems. The research focuses on two main aspects. One is the runoff from the highways, and we're also looking into the verge infiltration. So what happens if the water is discharged directly if the runoff is discharged directly to the water systems? or what if they are filtered through infiltration, through bioswales, or just in the verges near the highways. There are some directives. Yeah, so we're talking with people from Rijkswaterstaat about this topic. Yeah, from them we learned that there's about 20% of the water that falls on the roads that is collected by drainage systems. This can happen, yeah, when there's like a curve where there's when there's very steep, so then you need to collect the water in other ways. And we also learned that most of this water that is collected is usually discharged and treated to the surface water. So part of this research was to try to identify locations where possible pollutants reach the surface. Yeah, and try to find out and monitor how try to find out how we can monitor this in using tools like aquatic drones or other continuous measuring sensors. And so to find these locations, we used dashboards from Rijkswaterstaat, like this one, which basically have access to the whole network of the highways, and then you can zoom in and you can see the different elements, among which are some parts of the drainage systems, like the gutters, gullies, and the pipes leading to the water. So you combining this information with the water, with the surface water bodies of the Netherlands that are part of the Water Framework Directive, we try to find points of overlapping and try to find locations that are interesting to consider. Yeah, so we had some criteria to select locations. I'll not go into much detail about this, but we're mostly looking at highways with a high traffic intensity, which would create higher pollutant loads. Also like the road width, and as I mentioned, the presence of this drainage system, and of course the proximity to the water, surface water. And then we find a lot of locations like this where the surface water crosses perpendicularly to the highways, and then in some cases you can see gullies like this that collects the water and basically drain it directly to the rivers or canals. You can also find in this platform that I showed, try to identify where or track where the water is going. Sometimes it's going directly to ditches that are nearby, or sometimes it goes directly in there. So trying to find locations like this. It's also a location where the Rijkswaterstaat is also measuring or collecting samples to be analyzed in the small ponds over there that also collects the water from another smaller ditch that leads into it. And ditch is also connected to the Water Framework Directive water body. So we're trying to focus our research on this type of study. We also collected already some small data. We can already see that the electrical conductivity is higher in the smaller ponds than in the other ponds, also the temperature. So we need to see if this may be caused by temperature differences or by the pollutants themselves. We're looking into this type of question. Another locations that are interesting is when the surface water it's parallel to the highways, because then along a longer distance water is collected and heads and discharges into these canals. Sometimes it's not easy to find where the water is going, but in this, for example, this picture using Google Earth, you can find the pipe that's connected to a gully on the highway. Yeah, so our plan is to measure with an aquatic drone along these water bodies and try to see if near in the parts where it's near the highway, if we can see differences in certain parameters that may indicate problems with contamination or something that would require that we take action, or that we recommend that action is taken. Another location of interest that we frequently consider is the A58, which is a place near a highway where it's like a field lab where a lot of innovations are tested. And it's interesting because Rijkswaterstaat itself is already measuring some things from the runoff at this location. So it's already good baseline information. However, it's not really proximity to surface water, but still a good indication of what's contaminants are present in the water. So they have like a small section where the water is collected, and they can like isolate and quantify how much pollutants are in there. It's a photo of the location. We're also looking into the de-icing salt. So during the winter, as you know, tons or hundreds of tons of salts are millions actually are spread through the highways, and then eventually when it starts raining, eventually all this salt ends up in the surface water bodies, and of course may have some implications for the ecosystems and the vegetation, and also in some cases you have like different vegetation happening. So also one thing that we're looking into. Also some impression, you could sometimes see it when there's salt, and then it becomes like a sort of white, the asphalt becomes whiter, then eventually gets cleaned with the rainfall. So in terms of things that we will measure, so we will install sensors like this that can measure, for example, electrical conductivity continuously, which, for example, on the case of the salts, we would expect that there's like a spike in the salts when the salt arrives. So we installed in some locations sensors like these that will help us to understand how much salt is getting there, and how and for how long it stays there, and and eventually try to correlate this with other water quality and vegetation and more ecological observations that we will make. We'll, as mentioned, also use aquatic drones. And when I say aquatic drones, I'm talking about underwater drones and also surface drones that we can install sensors on, and also cameras and sonar. We can use these sensors and imaging technologies to map water quality and ecology. Here's some impression of things that what we can measure, and also images, of course, when the water is nice and clear. Otherwise, we have to focus on sonar and other acoustic methods. This is the drone in action in one of the ditches near the highways, where we've done already some field monitoring campaigns. I didn't make water quality maps yet, but I have some preliminary data that I got. But there's not yet much variation in the small stretch where we did, but there's we can also compare if we go to the same location multiple days, we can also compare what happens, what are the values are different or not. And here in some places actually there's like some variation in temperature that may be interesting to understand why this is happening. More recently, we've also been focusing on service and resting areas. So we actually may focus the whole efforts on these areas where basically we have a lot of trucks parked, and Rijkswaterstaat is interested in how to make these locations more climate resilient, and how would like a service area of the future would look like. So then, especially with the electric cars, they need to redesign because they need more space for charging cars. So it's also an opportunity to, or we think, to include also other measures like bioswales, or making sure that the water is infiltrated and filtered before it reaches the surface water. And we also learned that there's some policy documents that that make this OBAS, oil and petrol separator, mandatory. And this is and it requires drainage systems, and we are basically going to look into whether this is like Yeah, sorry. Whether, yeah, if we, for example, infiltrate the water, if that also has also solves the problem of the pollutants. And there's some research that already gives indication on this in this direction. But more research is needed. And actually, actually the policy prevents this, so it's quite interesting to look into that. So we're drafting some research questions, namely together with Ilko and Aaron from our team at the Hense. So we were trying to look, basically to try to compare locations where the water is infiltrated with where the water is discharged. So basically, in short, trying to see if there's like a difference. You may ask why to have virgin filtration, then you should ask a florist. It has a lot of ideas of how, or you could also look into climate scan with a lot of examples of how these type of measures have a positive effect and are suitable for climate adaptation. And again, with this research, we're going to collect some soil samples and maybe also use some soil sensors that are on this image, and also maybe try to quantify the hydraulic efficiency, so how quickly the water infiltrates into the sediment. All to try to understand how, if this infiltration verges are working and doing their job in filtering pollutants. And again, looking into finding selections together with Rijkswaterstaat. We had some, but now I think we're moving to more South Holland because of the traffic intensity volume. But I don't want to get into much detail on this because I think we're short on time. But thank you for your attention.
Nice. Thanks, Rui. Yeah, it's a great, I'm thinking basically tomorrow, the big day, as Cheyenne already called it, you're going to do some testing as well, right? Bringing the drones. We're going to flood roadside verges or a wadi to see how it actually works during the day. So that's quite exciting. And next week, we're going to show some videos of that, I would say. Yeah. So indeed, questions from you all.
I have a question. You had some TDRs on the one photo just in the previous slide.
I had some what, sorry?
TDR sensors. The soil moisture sensors.
Right, yeah.
Are you taking those measurements on a continuous basis, or do you take them at specific points in time, or how does it work? Because if you have a continuous measurement, then you obviously have to leave them there, and how do you do that?
Yeah, we do have one that are connected to a logger, so we can leave it on the location. We can also read it in multiple points. So I guess our approach would be when we go there to install it, then we will read in different points that at least we have an idea if there are like spatial variations, and then we'll just leave them for longer periods. And I think also some with some Florida also got some sensors that are also with a logger, I think. So definitely leaving them for longer periods.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, we need a lot more data to answer the questions. It's very sad Joe Bradley is not here, by the way.
Yeah.
I have 100 questions for you. Yeah, but again.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I saw her presentation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other points? Yeah.
The question about it, because we're measuring multiple things, multiple places, and with the aquatic drone, some of the water quality, and then next to the outlet, and then different types of outlets, I guess. So from the road themselves, from the bioswales, drainage systems, and from the parks. But does that mean that then with this research we get like the water part, water quality data on that, the part of the soil, and of course, or maybe some information about the inlet. And is it like, can the data also be found later on?
Yeah, I think we can definitely put the data available, probably in ClimateScan. That would be a good place. But indeed, we'll have like a lot of data. We're also trying to focus with drafting some research questions because it's also questions that are not easy to answer. So we're trying to make it a bit more concrete. That's also why we're trying to focus on these resting areas. Yeah.
I love the
So-
idea, and I love the idea that taking these measuring points into several parts, so you can really see how the pollutants go through the system. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
exactly.
All right.
Nice. Anything else?
No other
Yeah.
questions?
Got a question for Cheyenne about the finance that you were talking about. You mentioned this 15 million. I'm a bit confused. 15 million euros. Where's that figure from? Because it seems like a set amount, but the projects will all have different budgets. So it seems a bit odd.
Yes, this amount was specified as something as the budget that could be shifted throughout projects. The amount has been set on that amount in agreement with the ministry. So basically, projects can use that 50 million euros for climate adaptation measures in their projects without having to go back to the ministry to ask permission. So this is the amount of money they can spend. Without going through back to the ministry, asking permission, and doing additional things, going through additional procedures. If they wish to spend more than this, they can still always opt to go to the right procedures to get, to also be backed up by the ministry.
But as you said, this isn't extra money from the ministry. This is within the budget.
Yes.
So there's no real incentive push for them to use it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was also finding out within the interviews that I've done with the project managers. They also said, yeah, I am allowed to do this, but it goes at the cost of something else. That is a decision I don't necessarily want to be making. And so if you don't provide a financial incentive, and that's also why on the question I got earlier, I said, you have to provide a financial incentive to change behavior, because why would they change their approach in projects if they're not backed up by the right finances?
Yeah, it seems a bit odd, but yeah, I can understand with the politics, it's quite tricky.
Yeah. That might also be a great question for tomorrow as well, Cheyenne, as you say, just to see their views on it. Yeah, because
Yes,
of course
exactly.
this is.
It's also this instrument specifically is also under review right now because the people that have developed this instrument, I asked them like, hey, do you know of any projects that have used this instrument in practice, that have tried using it, and they weren't really sure. So there's not a really good overview of which instrument is used in which projects, and so there's a bit of confusion about that as well. So I'm also very interested to see what these evaluations come up with, because I do think something has to change about this instrument for it to become effective.
Yeah, that's already a great result from your research, actually, to have that overview and ask people, and having this climate cafe as well, that people actually know what's out there. Yeah, and then be critical about it as well, and seeing what's lacking, and have an advice for Rijkswaterstaat. So that's
Yes, it's also a relatively new instrument. So a lot of the instruments I presented are relatively new. So I also think there is some issues because it's relatively new. We don't know yet how it would work in a project until we actually see it. So we also need to gather this feedback from the different levels within the organization to kind of make them working properly. But I think in a few years, these instruments will probably be used a lot better than they are right now.
Yeah, indeed.
A follow on from that, do you see any resistance from project managers, from engineers, to use these new instruments?
I wouldn't necessarily say resistance, because they all think climate adaptation and climate change is an important topic to take into account when doing their projects. What they do tell me is that they aren't really that much engaged in it and using it because there's so much pressure on their regular tasks. So there's currently so many assets that need to be renewed. So what they're trying to do is standardize the process, make all the project processes go faster and faster and faster, because we need to produce more bridges, more tunnels, more of these assets. They have to keep functioning, and there is so little time and so little funds available. So these projects are under a lot of pressure and aren't necessarily currently thinking about climate adaptation because of it. So that's what I try to refer to as a bit of the capacity issue that there already is.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you're the keynote speaker tomorrow, and start with the inventory and some questions about it. And later on, it's Rui in the field. So yeah, maybe we should slowly close. Also, if there are no urgent questions. So maybe closing off, Rui, can you explain a bit more what you're gonna show tomorrow in the field? And then I'm gonna ask Cheyenne what we're doing next week, because actually you were the organizer of that, and then we can close off. Rui, what about tomorrow in the field? Because you say one drone, but you have a fleet. I saw a lot of aquatic drones. So what are you going to bring?
Yeah, exactly. I think one of our colleagues will have also like some soil sensors.
Yeah,
I will bring aquatic drone, so a small ROV. So there's like some water in the field lab. So I'll just show people how it works, and
No.
So it's nice for people to see and have a better impression. Maybe it leads to also other projects. So.
Indeed, yeah, and explaining more about the sensors, and because we really need that data. Absolutely, yeah. Nice. Looking forward to it. Both of your presentations tomorrow. So what are we gonna do next week, Cheyenne, in the Climate Cafe?
Next week we have two other PhDs coming to present their research. The first being Nirmal. He is from the Technical University of Delft, and I believe he is doing something with predictions about unsafe situations on roads, so road conditions caused by extreme weather events. And I believe we also have Dagmar from the University of Utrecht, and I believe she is focusing on deltas and extreme rainfall. So yeah.
It's going to be exciting. And also we're going to look back next week on tomorrow. What are the discussions with Cheyenne? What did Rui do in the field? So I'm really looking forward to it. So thanks to you both, of course, of the great presentations and kicking this 2-day, 2-episode Climate Cafe here. So thanks a lot. Hope to see you next week. Hope to see you tomorrow. Thanks again, and have a great evening.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Nice. Ja.
Right.
Dank Cheyenne, was leuk.
Yes.
Ja, was hartstikke goed. Wat leuk. Je bent goed voorbereid voor morgen volgens mij.
Ik hoop het.
Toch? Nee, dat wordt heel leuk. En voor Jonathan Charnay, je wist het hè, dat het morgen is. Dus kom gerust langs. Ook zeker de lunch. Er is over. Er komen maar 35 mensen in plaats van 50. Dus
Maar waar is het? By the...
at building. Yeah.
Building, okay.
So it might be nice, especially 12:30. We'll be there 12 or something, to see some of the field. Come a bit earlier to see Cheyenne. There's always drinks afterwards. So also invited. So feel free to drop by, I would say. We're going to flood a swale. So, yeah.
I've got a meeting at entrance till 12:30.
Okay.
Right next door, so I'll pop in after that.
Exactly. Stay there. Yes. We'll probably be at the swale that you know. So,
okay.
Yeah, nice. And then we're set.
There's the city tomorrow. Are you able?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's 2 meetings tomorrow for them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which one are we going to? Are we going to both?
Or split up and do more damage?
Yeah. Okay.
Ghostbusters. Yeah.
Okay,
that's good.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, and then we're set for next week as well, I think. So all good.
Quick question for Floris. What time are you going to be there tomorrow? Because I was thinking of helping with preparations if necessary.
Yeah, I'm gonna probably get a train at 6:12, and that means I'm gonna be there at 8:12, but I might have a delay, so I hope to be there before 9. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yes.
yeah, and I think it's Aaron's gonna be there, Ilko's gonna be there. So I think most of the things are arranged. The panels, there's some posters we have to hang up. So because it's 10 starting, right? So
Yes.
we're quite yeah, flexible, I would say.
All right.
So yeah, it's great if you're earlier to see
Yes,
if
okay.
something is missing, and otherwise we can
exactly.
already watch the equipment. That's gonna be fun. So
All right.
yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
See you tomorrow.
Okay. Have a great
Good.
evening, everyone, then.
You too. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Okay.
Bye.